On paper, everything looks fine. You have a decent job. Your household income is higher than it was 5 or 10 years ago. You're doing what you were told was right. And yet saving feels harder. One emergency feels like a financial earthquake. And progress always feels just out of reach. If you've ever wondered how you can earn more than your parents did but still feel more stressed, this video is for you. Because the problem isn't laziness, bad decisions, or lack of discipline. It's math. And most people never see it clearly. Let's start with the most basic math, the kind that doesn't care about motivation, discipline, or good intentions. Over the last 20 years, two things happened at the same time. Wages increased slowly. Costs increased aggressively. And that single divergence explains more about middle-class financial stress than almost any budgeting mistake ever could. Most people feel this instinctively, but they've never seen it laid out clearly. On paper, income did rise. Raises happened. Promotions happened. Dual-income households became normal. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Income growth followed a linear path while living costs followed a compounding path. And linear growth cannot outrun compounding pressure. When people say, "I make more money than my parents did at my age," they're usually correct. But that comparison is incomplete. Because what matters isn't how much you earn, it's how much of that income remains under your control after fixed costs. 20 years ago, a middle-class family might have spent a manageable percentage on housing, a modest amount on healthcare, far less on education and childcare, minimal ongoing subscription costs, lower insurance premiums. Today, those same categories dominate the household budget. So even though paychecks are larger, the margin is thinner. And margin is where financial freedom lives. Housing, the silent absorber. Housing alone explains a massive portion of the gap. Home prices didn't just rise, they detached from wages entirely. Rent didn't just increase, it normalized consuming 30 to 40% of income, and when housing eats that much of your earnings, everything else becomes fragile. Savings become optional. Investing becomes aspirational. Emergencies become crises. The math doesn't care how responsible you are. If a paycheck enters your account already pre-allocated to survival, wealth can't accumulate. Healthcare. The invisible tax. Healthcare costs didn't rise gradually, they exploded quietly. Premiums went up. Deductibles went up. Out-of-pocket costs multiplied. So even insured families live one medical event away from financial instability. This isn't poor planning, it's structural exposure. You don't budget your way out of a system where essential services inflate faster than wages. Education and childcare. Compounding pressure. Education costs didn't simply become expensive. They became front-loaded and long-lasting. Student loans follow families for decades. Childcare rivals mortgage payments. College savings competes with retirement savings. So parents aren't just supporting children, they're financing an entire parallel economy. And once again, wages didn't scale to match this reality. Insurance, utilities, and the quiet expansion of fixed costs. Here's where the math gets even more unforgiving. Many costs that used to be flexible became fixed and unavoidable. Insurance expanded. Utilities rose steadily. Digital services became essential, not optional. Transportation costs increased through financing and maintenance. None of these feel extravagant. None feel irresponsible. But together they compress cash flow. And compressed cash flow destroys optionality. Linear income versus exponential costs. This is the core imbalance. Income increases step by step. Annual raises, promotions, career changes. Costs increase through systems. Market pricing, policy shifts, industry consolidation, inflation compounding on previous inflation. So while income moves forward politely, costs sprint ahead without permission. The result is a widening gap that no amount of discipline alone can close. Why the middle class gets crushed? The middle class lives in the most dangerous zone. They earn too much for assistance. They earn too little for insulation. They shoulder the full weight of rising costs with none of the protection. Low-income households often qualify for subsidies. High-income households absorb shocks easily. The middle class absorbs everything, quietly. And because the struggle looks invisible from the outside, it gets misdiagnosed as personal failure. The fixed cost ratio problem. Here's the metric almost no one talks about. What percentage of your income is fixed before you make a single choice? Once that number crosses 60 to 70%, financial flexibility collapses. At that point, saving requires sacrifice. Investing feels risky. Any surprise becomes destabilizing. And modern middle-class families live well past that threshold. Not by choice, by math. Why budgeting feels pointless. This is why traditional advice often feels insulting. Just cut back. Track your spending. Make coffee at home. Those suggestions assume discretionary slack. But when costs dominate income, there is no slack to optimize. You can't optimize your way out of structural imbalance. You can only understand it and then make strategic adjustments over time. The psychological damage of the math. This imbalance doesn't just affect bank accounts. It affects identity. People start believing they're irresponsible, they're behind, they failed somehow, when in reality, they're navigating an economic equation that changed without their consent. And shame is expensive. Shame keeps people reactive instead of strategic. The real takeaway. The middle class isn't struggling because it forgot how to manage money. It's struggling because the math changed and no one updated the rules. Income grew slowly. Costs accelerated relentlessly. And the difference landed squarely on working families. Once you understand this, something powerful happens. You stop blaming yourself. And once shame disappears, clarity becomes possible. Here's what truly defines the modern middle class, and it has nothing to do with income level, job title, or lifestyle choices. It's this. Most of your money is already gone before you get paid. The paycheck arrives, but it doesn't feel like income. It feels like a temporary pass-through account. Because waiting for that money are obligations that don't care how hard you worked for it. Mortgage or rent, car payments, insurance premiums, utilities, childcare, student loans. These aren't optional expenses. They're not lifestyle upgrades. They're structural commitments. And once they're locked in, your financial life becomes rigid. Why fixed costs are so dangerous? Fixed costs are dangerous not because they're high but because they're inflexible. You can't negotiate rent every month. You can't skip insurance. You can't pause student loans without consequences. You can't tell your child's daycare you'll catch up next quarter. These expenses arrive on schedule whether your income does or not. Which means your financial system has no shock absorbers. The 70 to 80% rule no one talks about. Here's the quiet threshold where everything changes. When 70 to 80% of your income is fixed, flexibility disappears. At that point, saving feels impossible. Investing feels risky. Emergency funds stay theoretical. One surprise breaks the system. A small increase in prices doesn't hurt a little. It hurts everything. A $200 rent increase isn't just $200. It's money taken from groceries, savings, healthcare, or debt repayment. There's no buffer left to absorb the impact. Why middle-class stress feels constant. This is why middle-class stress never fully turns off. Even in good months, there's tension. Because you're not managing money, you're managing commitments. You're not asking, what should I do with this income? You're asking, will this income cover what's already promised? That psychological shift matters. Keeps people reactive instead of proactive. The trap tightens over time. The fixed cost trap doesn't hit all at once. It builds slowly. A slightly nicer apartment, a longer car loan, a better school district, a more responsible insurance plan. Each decision feels reasonable. But together, they lock future income into yesterday's choices. And once income is pre-committed, freedom disappears quietly, without drama. Why hard work doesn't solve this? This is where the narrative breaks. People assume working harder fixes financial pressure. But when fixed costs dominate, more income often just leads to higher taxes, higher expectations, more commitments. The trap scales with earnings. Which is why so many families say, we make more than ever, but it never feels like enough. The real danger. The danger isn't spending too much. The danger is losing flexibility. Because flexibility is what turns income into opportunity. And once it's gone, even good decisions feel ineffective. This is the fixed cost trap. And understanding it is the first step toward escaping it. This is where most people get confused. They believe the pressure they feel is an income problem. So they chase the raise, the promotion, the job switch, the side income. And when it finally happens, there's relief for a moment. But then something strange occurs. Life adjusts. The raise that doesn't change anything. A higher paycheck arrives, and almost immediately, the apartment upgrade feels justified. The newer car feels reasonable. Insurance costs increase. Normal spending quietly expands. Not because you suddenly became reckless, but because the system expects you to. Higher income resets what's considered acceptable, safe, and responsible. The floor rises. Lifestyle inflation is structural, not personal. Most people think lifestyle inflation is about self-control. It's not. It's about structural pressure. Landlords charge more in better neighborhoods. Car dealers frame higher payments as affordability. Insurance premiums scale with assets. Schools, childcare, and activities align with income brackets. You don't choose inflation consciously. You're nudged into it. Why the math never changes. Here's the part no one explains clearly. The equation stays the same. More income, higher fixed costs, same pressure. The numbers get bigger, but the margin doesn't. So you're earning more, but saving the same. Stressing the same. One emergency away from disruption. This is why so many people say, I thought making more would fix this. It doesn't, because the structure remains intact. Raises upgrade comfort, not freedom. Raising income often upgrades comfort, not control. Better surroundings, smoother experiences, more convenience, but not more optionality. Freedom comes from surplus, not from scale. And surplus disappears when fixed costs expand to meet income. The cage gets nicer. This is the uncomfortable truth. Earning more often just upgrades the cage. The bars are padded. The view is better. The furniture is nicer. But the cage is still there. And it still demands monthly payment. Why middle-class families feel trapped. This is why middle-class families don't feel irresponsible. Because they aren't. They did what they were told. Worked harder. Earned more. Leveled up responsibly. Yet the pressure never left. Because the system rewards income but taxes flexibility. The illusion of progress. Progress is marketed as consumption. But real progress is optionality. The ability to say no. Absorb shocks. Change direction. Pause without panic. Income alone doesn't provide that. Structure does. The real solution, hinted, not revealed. This doesn't mean earning more is bad. It means earning more without changing structure changes nothing. Freedom isn't created by raises. It's created by controlling what income is allowed to touch. And that's where the real shift begins. Debt changes the math completely. A $500 monthly expense is painful. A $500 monthly debt payment is dangerous. Not because the number is bigger, but because the rules are different. Expenses end. Debt compounds. An expense is temporary. You can cut it, delay it, replace it, negotiate it. Debt doesn't work that way. Debt locks today's decisions into tomorrow's income. Every month, before you make a single choice, part of your paycheck is already gone. That's the multiplier effect. How debt shrinks the future. Debt does three things at once. First, it reduces future flexibility. When income drops or costs rise, debt doesn't care. It still demands payment, on time. That removes options. And options are the only thing that protects households during shocks. Second, debt transfers income to interest. Interest is money you work for but never get to use. It doesn't buy comfort. It doesn't create security. It doesn't improve your life. It simply services the past. Over years, that transfer quietly drains thousands of dollars that could have built breathing room. Third, debt turns small mistakes into long-term setbacks. A single emergency, a car repair, a medical bill, a job gap, becomes years of payments. The problem isn't the event. It's how long the consequences last. The middle-class debt reality. Here's the misunderstood part. Middle-class families don't use debt for luxury. They use it to survive rising costs. Credit cards cover groceries. Loans cover medical gaps. Financing fills income timing mismatches. This isn't indulgence. It's structural survival. Why debt feels invisible at first. Debt feels manageable early on. The payments fit. The lifestyle continues. Nothing looks broken. But debt isn't linear. It stacks. Each new obligation increases the fragility of the system. Eventually, most income goes toward maintaining the past, not building the future. When falling behind becomes permanent. This is how falling behind becomes permanent. Not through one bad decision, but through layered obligations. Debt narrows margins. Narrow margins increase reliance on more debt, and the cycle feeds itself. At some point, even income growth can't outrun the weight. The emotional cost nobody measures. Debt also carries psychological weight. It creates constant background pressure. A low-level anxiety that never shuts off. A sense that every choice is constrained. That pressure affects health, relationships, risk tolerance. It quietly lowers quality of life. The real danger of debt. Debt doesn't just cost money. It costs time, energy, and freedom. And once too much of the future is pre-sold, progress stops being about growth and becomes about damage control. The shift that changes everything, hinted. Debt isn't evil, but unmanaged debt rewrites the math against you. The solution isn't extreme sacrifice. It's understanding how debt multiplies pressure, and refusing to let short-term relief mortgage long-term stability. And that realization is where the cycle starts to break. Here's another invisible number: time. Middle-class families trade time for income. But fixed costs demand certainty, not freedom. So people work longer hours, take fewer risks, delay rest, delay health, delay life. The math forces stability at the cost of mobility. And over decades, that trade becomes exhaustion, not wealth. Financial advice says, just invest early. But math says, you can't invest money you don't control. When emergencies wipe out savings, when debt absorbs surplus, when every dollar already has a job. Investing feels theoretical, not practical. This isn't a mindset issue. It's a cash flow reality.